Before her new novel even debuted, it was already in the works for television. Pieces of Her is the latest thriller from international best-selling author Karin Slaughter. I talked with her right before the book hit the shelves. Now you're a veteran writer. After 18 novels, how do you keep finding new material?
You know, I live in Atlanta, and it's a very safe city in a lot of parts, but in other parts it's not so safe. And so I've been doing this for such a long time that a lot of times the police officers I've talked to in the past will come up and say, hey, you may want to look into this case, or you may want to watch the news and see what's going on over here. And a lot of my ideas do come from that because I think, you know, I'm writing crime fiction, and crime fiction is something that happens every day in the world. So I need to make sure that I'm being topical and staying on top of the things that are happening, especially in Atlanta, which is a city I often write about.
And when you were researching Pieces of Her, what did you find out that would surprise most people about police and detective work?
Well, so one of the big themes in the story is that this daughter, Andrea, doesn't really know who her mother, Laura, is until something really shocking and violent happens at the very beginning of the book. And so Laura is in some ways a witness to a crime, but she's also a suspect. And I had to talk to one of my people I've been going to many years, for many years, who's a lead investigator for the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and just sit down with her and say, how would you approach this? You know, because you have to be really careful these days in policing, because if you push too far for the wrong person and you end up being incorrect about what really happened, then you could be looking at in some cases being sued and losing your job. So there's a lot going on in a detective's mind when they're talking to a person about this, and I wanted to make sure I capture that nuance.
Now you're a storyteller, and you've talked a lot about the real-world connections you have. So what inspires your passion for crime drama?
I've always been interested in crime. Even when I was a kid, I was reading Nancy Drew and Encyclopedia Brown. As I got older, I discovered Anne Rule, and I never looked back. I mean, she wrote a book called The Stranger Beside Me about Ted Bundy, who was a person she actually knew in real life. And her perspective, not just on the horrible crimes that Ted Bundy was committing, but what it did to the communities where he was stalking women, what it did to their families, how it affected some of his victims who managed to get away. All of those elements around the crime always fascinated me, and it's something that I try to write about in my book. You know, you might have a shocking sort of thing that opens up the first part of the book, but the rest of the book is going to talk about the fallout. So it's not as much about the crime as what the crime leaves behind.
Pieces of Her is now on sale.